Welcome to episode 30 of Experience Andy Wines Live. And today I'm coming to you from the center camera because the top camera isn't working. And you know what? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Learning to respond to situations versus reacting to people or stimuluses. So we'll get into that here shortly. First, let's have a moment of gratitude. This week, I am thankful for, of all things, the weather. Right here in Wisconsin, it's been 70 degrees the last 3 days. And I'm extremely thankful that for the business I'm in, junk removal, the winters are typically tough and rough, and it's slow going over the winter. And I'm really thankful, and I have this renewed of rebirth. It's spring. We're here. The weather's participating, and it put me in a great mood. Saturday, I was leaving an electronics recycling event with our team, and I stopped at the Dunkin' to get myself a cup of coffee because I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and I was in a great mood. And it had to do with the recycling event, and moreover was the weather. I was like, you know what? Let me take this all in. And so sometimes for me, it's important celebrating even the simplest things as the weather being great. So that's what we're thankful for today. And often it's good for me to remember to be thankful for the things that are uncontrollable because it reduces my need to want to control and create more situations in which I get what I want by feeling gratitude. So there we go. Thankful for the weather. It's simple, and yet it's great, and it has an impact on my life today. All right, the business at hand. I have a book, Words Fucking Matter, available on Amazon. We have all the versions, hardcover, softcover, Kindle version, and audiobook. Pick it up, learn the things, and today we're going to be jumping right into the book as we talk about learning to respond to situations versus react to people. Now, as humans, we have a tendency to react. You'll hear things like, oh, I overreacted, or I struggled, and that's part of the human condition, and it comes down to how we were wired very early on in our lives. And so there we go, boom, here we go. Here is our graphic, right? This is how our brains work. We have our big brain, like the thing on top way up here, right? Our big brain, which is clear and confident and creative, and then we have our lower lizard brain, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. And in between, we have a part of our brain that decides as stimulus comes in, as things happen near us, how do we respond to them or how we react to them is all based off of, do we anticipate this thing being a threat? And do we operate with this fear mindset? Or do we look at this as an opportunity, right? And we consciously use our big brain, our clear, confident, creative brain. And so what it comes down to, it is ultimately a choice in life how we respond. Right? So the choice is clear, confident, creative, or flight or freeze. And if we look at it in more simple words, rooted in language, typically we're not talking about flight or freeze or clear, confident, or creative. We're using other words like, do we operate out of abundance, love, assurance, or are we operating out of scarcity, hate, or insecurities? Right? And this is a choice we make in the words we use. So let's look at it again now. Some of this came from Dr. Bill Crawford, and some of this is stuff I learned from the Army. So one of the things that happened in the Army when I went to mass resiliency training taught me that there's going to be things that happen near us, right? So that's an activating event. Something that happens, boom, here it is. We have a choice now. When it comes into our brain, we have a choice. Do we operate out of our frontal lobe? Do we operate out of the clear, creative, confident part of our brain, or the lower lizard brain? And this is something that Dr. Bill Crawford talks about quite a bit. I took 7 years and hundreds of videos that Dr. Bill has come out with through the years and boiled it down into a chapter less than 10-minute read to understand all these principles. Here's the choice. Are you going to make a conscious decision and respond to the situation, or are you going to make an unconscious, fear-based reaction to typically the person? And so how we do this is it all starts with self-reflection. So we'll start there first. When I look at the methodology I use in my life, it's about self-reflection. That's the first step. I often thought it was the last step. And as I've realized now later in my life is reflection is the first step because that's something we can do always in the present and look at what's happened to us recently in the past. And then how are we going to respond to a stimulus, or how did we respond to that stimulus and was it in line with our ideals? I often talk about that, right? I always about to say we, and then I'm projecting, I have a set of values and beliefs, and I don't always live up to those things, right? That's reality. And so in self-reflection, I can say, okay, how did I show up in these situations? And as I learn more about how I showed up in a certain situation, I can dig into why I showed up in that certain way, why I felt fulfilled, why I felt grateful, or why I said something underneath my breath that was negative or unnecessary or negative in nature and brought me down. And as I have this self-reflection, then it comes into that self-awareness. Now I know when I'm around this certain stimulus, this is how I may respond to it, or this is my natural tendency. And so now I have this opportunity within my self and in the self, finally, the third part, self-regulation. When faced with this stimulus in the future, how am I going to choose to respond? What do I need to do? And so understanding this whole methodology is the key, right? Look at how are you showing up, self-reflection, self-awareness. Why are you showing up that way? And then finally, self-regulation. What can you do about that? And when you do that, you are starting to learn to respond, because now you're using your clear, creative, confident brain. Oh, my mic fell there. You're using your clear, confident, creative brain, not in real time. You're using it when you have the whole opportunity to look at the situation in its totality, cause and effect, in the result, right? How you showed up and then the result. And because of this, now you can use this clear, creative, confident brain to make a decision, so that when you're faced with that stimulus again, you already have a pre-position on it. You already have an idea of how you're going to respond. Years ago, I went through a very contested, very ugly divorce. And it was ugly. I was not a good person. I'm not happy with who I was. And it was cyclical. And I did the same thing. I would have something. My ex-wife would say something or do something. And whatever my heat of the moment thought was, I would let it all out. That was it. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to make sure I felt that my perspective was heard, because I felt offended and I felt degraded and I felt that I needed to defend myself and my honor and all these things to this person. And then it would escalate, and then she would get loud, and then I would get loud, and then one of us would call the lawyer, which caused the other lawyer to get involved, which turned into a court date or a mediation or a bunch of emails back and forth, and ultimately a bunch of money that was unnecessarily spent so we could argue. And it took me a long time to come to this conclusion that, hold on, I'm getting divorced for a reason. This is not working out between us. I don't need to defend myself to that person. So long as I know at the end of the day, I can put my head down, then I'm good. So instead, what I learned to do is every time I would get into a fight with my wife, soon to be ex, separated person, right, I would instead call somebody else. I didn't call my lawyer because that cost me lots of money. I didn't call her and react, so I would call somebody else. And typically it was my mom or a couple of my close friends. Right? I'll admit, I talk to my mom every day. She's my closest ally. Even to this day, when I'm faced with a great stressor, I typically call her. It's a soothing voice. It's somebody that knows me. It's somebody that can get me back on track. And now I'm responding to the situation versus reacting to the person. I pre-position my brain to say, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And eventually I learned, oh, hold on, I don't need to call anybody. Let me look at this information this person's saying about me. So if my ex-wife is saying these negative things about me, what truth is there behind that? So now I have time to, I'm using this conscious, clear, creative brain to slow down the situation. Say, okay, hold on. These things aren't true. If these things aren't true, if I have data that show that, no, this isn't true, I'm not this person that they've made me out to be, then what is there to defend? I know it's not true. I have evidence to prove it's not true. Oh, you want to have a court date? Okay, I'll show up at the court date. I don't need to give attention to my ex-wife. I don't need to give money to my lawyer. I don't need to get myself worked up about false accusations that I know to be untrue, because I've now used data, right? I creatively came up with, okay, you said these things about me. At one point, she told me I was a combat veteran that was full of PTSD and rage, and it was unhealthy for me to be around my daughter. That's what I was faced with. I was faced with supervised visitations because that's what she accused me of. So I had to look at that and really take that in, and I was pissed, right? You're taking away quality time and time with my daughter. You want me to be supervised because you're afraid of me. And I looked back at it and I go, okay, let's look at this, right? Yes, I'm a veteran. That's true. Yes, I have PTSD. It's also true. Crazy? It's subjective, right? I've never caused harm to anybody physically, right? Since I've been a father, and even before that for a number of years, right? I've never put my hand on her. I never called people names. These are things that I'm not, that I was accused of doing. And so now I can look at the qualities. Okay, yep, I have PTSD. Yep, I struggle sometimes. I also know I'm a really good father. I know that when I'm around my daughter, it brings out the best in me. So instead of taking things head on, I sat back. I listened to the accusations. I went to court. No big deal. There was nothing, there was no evidence there. I faced the judge, right? This was an opportunity, this, I almost lost parenting time with my daughter. This was significant. And I remember walking into that courtroom confident because I knew the things that they said about me were not true. That took me 18 months of hard work to get to that point. And it was ugly before that. And it's because I started to learn to develop a response versus reacting to the person. That was almost 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And I still, to this day, struggle with it. I had a situation last Friday where there was negative things said about our business. And my heat of the moment thought was, I need to defend myself. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I thought, no, hold on. If this is an HR issue, I go to HR. We have a director of HR within our company. If it's a marketing issue, I go to the marketing company. And if it's not an issue, there's nothing for me to solve. Why stoke the fire? Why put myself out there? And then I had about a 40-minute drive. I drove from Bayside to Pewaukee while this was all going down. And I sat there and reminded myself of all the good things that we do. I literally went through the slide deck of our sales presentation I give to consumers and talk about all the amazing things we do in the community. I think about the relationships I have with our employees today and how great those relationships are. I think about how toxic this place has been in the past and how much we've shifted. I reminded myself of all the initiatives we had last quarter that we accomplished, all the initiatives we have this quarter, and what we're going to accomplish to make this a great place to work. Because it used to not be a priority to me to have a great place to work. I wanted to recycle a lot, and I wanted to represent veterans, and I wanted to make this company grow. Never was a priority to say, okay, let's make this a great place to work. Let's make this a place where people really want to come. I said it. We had a couple things, family dinner, and it was good enough. And now I remind myself how intentional I am. So when I am attacked or people come after my character, I can look back and say, okay, hold on. Let me use my creative, clear, confident brain to respond to this situation. And sometimes, and this is what I learned, whether it was my ex-wife or this newest thing, the best response I have is to say nothing at all. My grandma always told me you never have to apologize for things you do not say. I also know, and I've done this bit 1,000 times, and I tell this joke repeatedly, right? I've gotten the things I've gotten in this world, and good, bad, or indifferent, because of my mouth. I know my greatest wins and my greatest defeats are because of my ability to talk. I sit with you guys every week, 30 episodes deep now, where I come on here and I talk for 15 to 20 minutes staring at a camera in a room all by myself. That's what I do and what I do well. And yet, it doesn't always serve me. So I've learned there's certain times and certain situations and certain people where a response is no response at all. And that's the necessary response, because reacting to the person fuels that fire. And that fire will be out of control because it's not your fire. And yet, or not my fire, I'll say, right? Not my fire. And yet I'm putting energy and effort to fuel somebody else's fire. What happens when I take that same effort and energy and I fuel my own fire? So in the case when it was years ago when it came to my ex-wife, I fueled the fire of being a really good father. I made a point to ensure that every weekend I had my daughter that was not supervised, where I picked her up on Thursdays and I had her through Sunday. We met the most time available. I used to drive 3 hours and 45 minutes every other Thursday to pick my daughter up at noon in Peoria, Illinois, so I could drive back so she could sleep in the car during her nap time from 12 to 2, and so we could have a nice night together on Thursday, versus doing that 4-hour drive starting at 5 p.m. and meeting halfway, right? And then my daughter doesn't get back until 9 p.m., and that's not a great way to start a weekend. So I took all that same energy and said, okay, what do I need to do to build a kick-ass company, to build an amazing culture within our company so that I can take off every Thursday, 26 Thursdays a year, so I can maximize that quality time with my daughter, because I learned to respond. I took that anxiety, I took that energy, that nervousness, the nauseousness, and I turned it into excitement that I can now fuel the fire that is my desire to be an amazing father. And even now today, when people come after me and accuse me of certain things or take a shot at the way we run our company, I remind myself who the fuck we are, why we do what we do. And I make a point to go out and have an amazing day. I talked about from the top, my gratitude today was about the weather. On Saturday, I got to spend time with 9 of our great employees doing an electronics collections event because we have a kick-ass company. I took the fuel from Friday and I turned it into positive energy on Saturday. And even yesterday, I was here at the shop for a little bit, and one of our employees, this guy, Casey, top of the amazing guy, he comes in on a Sunday. I go, what are you doing here on a Sunday? He goes, I normally come out on Sundays. He goes, there's a couple things I want to get done. So we had an amazing conversation on a Sunday because he chose to come in on a Sunday unpaid, not in his uniform, casual, to get an hour's worth of work done that he wanted to get done before the week and reshaped and rebuilt his office. What an amazing employee I have. Because I chose to take this energy. I chose to take the anxiety. I chose to turn it into excitement because I choose to put a response in place before the stimulus happens. So the next time my ex-wife contacts me and it's about something that I have no control over and it has nothing to do with the health or welfare or travel needs of our daughter, I don't respond. The next time someone comes at me and it tries to take down our company because of their negative thoughts, I'm going to use that as a reminder of an amazing company we have. And I'm going to use that as energy to double down and reinforce the amazing things we're doing within our company and celebrate the people that are here every day, that do put in the work, that do the three things that make them and everybody else in this world amazing. They go out every week, and I challenge you to do the same thing. Do the fucking thing. Tell the fucking world. Show the fuck up. And we'll see you next week after you've learned to respond.